Good morning, good day, and good evening. I'm, as always, your host, Brody Robertson. This is an episode that I had initially tried to plan, I don't know, 2, 3 years ago, whatever it was. We had DMs back and forth, and then, I don't know, DM stuff. Someone didn't respond, but we're here now. Welcome to the show, qdot. Why don't you just
Hey,
explain before we get into like any of the more fun stuff, why don't you just explain the project that you make? Because I'm sure there's a lot of people who are going to see the title of this episode and think, I don't know what the hell you're talking about. So, go.
much as you would expect a fox on the internet on a YouTube show about Linux, I do weird sex stuff. Uh, I
You gotta be
am
more
the
specific than that.
I am the project lead of buttplug.io. So not only is it the name of the project, it's our website domain. We produce a software library and a set of applications that allow you to control intimate devices from your computer. So basically, there have been over the past 15 years or so, kind of this explosion of sort of haptic devices, sex toys, whatever you want to call them,
You're
that can
gonna
be
say it
controlled.
eventually. We're past
Yeah.
we're past the YouTube. Look, this video is not going to be monetized. So like, no matter what we do, this
Oh,
video
okay.
be monetization.
Okay. I figured we were like past that first minute, but I just wanted to make sure. Okay, sex toys. Yeah. So there have been proliferation ever since like smartphones became smartphones. You could start hooking sex toys up to your phone and control them. I started this library back in 2017. It's almost 8 years old now, because there were more and more toys coming out, and there was like no centralized way to control them. You just had to download the manufacturer's app and hope you could do what you wanted with that. So what we do is we go through, we get the toy, we reverse engineer it, find the protocol. Like 95% of these toys are using Bluetooth LE, which is a nightmare. So we make the Bluetooth work on Mac, Linux, Windows, iOS, Android. We also support USB and serial and different network connections and stuff. So basically, we take all of the boring parts of this that no one really wants to do or even really think about and get all that done for you so you can get on to hooking whatever game it is you have or whatever movie it is you want to watch to this hardware. At this point, I forgot to check before we came in, but I think we're in the high 500s of
Wow.
devices support. Yeah, it's
There's a
like
list on the website,
570,
isn't there?
580. There is so on the
Is
Buttplug website, there's like a tiny list. The big
Oh,
list
okay.
is at
Sorry,
iostindex.com.
yeah, I meant there was a link on the
Yeah.
website. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's
697 it
um,
says right now.
oh, that might be everything on the site. Like there's
Oh.
stuff on that site that we do not support. So if you
Oh, I see.
if you filter it
So
for butt plug support, it's still in the 500. So
I
it's a
see. This thing's near the
ridiculous amount of
deprecated.
devices.
Yep.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. So these are things that have been either supported in the past, uh, you know that it exists and it just hasn't been tested, and then also things that have been, supported as well.
Yes.
Right.
Yes. So I mean the main team of the project, there's really two of us.
Mhm.
I am sort of the face of the project as well as all of the shit posting on social media and the core library architecture. And then we have another devices dev who is the person that runs IOST Index, and they really do buy all the hardware. Like they have turned this into their own personal Pokemon and they have caught them all. So I mean, it's just like boxes and boxes of this stuff. Meanwhile, like I'm trying to pare down at the moment. I do not need all of these vibrators.
I was gonna ask
Like
if you had to, because obviously there's the list and things have been tested. If you had to guess how many you personally have, because like if we have like a firmware developer, right, like someone developing some what is the thing called whatever. Let's say you're developing you want to support mice in a mouse configuration software, an open source configuration software. You're gonna have a bunch of mice, right? If you're supporting keyboards, if you're like doing anything we need to support a bunch of devices, you're probably gonna buy a bunch of devices or be sent devices by companies that want to have their device be supported. How many? What is the number?
So I mean, there's like the devices that I just get, and then there's like I've got a museum of the special ones, like the stuff that I'm never gonna be able to buy again, or for some reason, or like either the company went out of business and it's never going to be made again, or it was just a horrible piece of hardware and it should never be made again. But overall, I would say I'm in like the 150 range or so. So I mean, and the problem is like, I mean, a lot of these are like really, really tiny. But then you've got things like your machines, like your actual like rotary fucking machines and stuff.
Yeah.
I have 4 of those. No one on this planet needs 4 fucking machines unless you're like renting them out or something, which I am not. That is not a business I want to be in. I do not want to clean that when it comes back in.
Just thinking like the logistics, like logistically, you could probably use 3 at once. Maybe.
Yeah. But I mean, it turns into a very pokey game of Twister. And there's. Yeah, it's a time.
So for the people that think this project is just like, I don't understand why this exists, think of it like Home Assistant for sex toys, right? Like all of these toys have their own like, walled garden applications, and this allows you to bridge that gap. Like with the home automation stuff, where you have like the Philips app, you have all of these different apps and their different light bulbs and other random stuff. It's basically the same idea, but for sex toys.
I should also say we do have a home assistant plugin.
Of course you do.
Yeah, so the reason, not only is this a way to make sure that you can access all of this hardware. So it's like there is that technical challenge, but there's also a really interesting design challenge around this. And this is about how do we create a language for touch? Because if you think about it, like computers, we're pretty good at video. We're pretty good at audio. We can recreate a lot of things. We can make really realistic looking things or not so realistic looking things. And we're pretty good at that. But we've still got like taste, touch, and smell that we haven't really got. Like, I mean, smell tech is still the joke it has been for the past 20
I know
years.
there's
Taste
been tech demos and stuff like that, but it's never really been more than a tech demo.
Oh, they're so bad. They're so bad. I've had to deal with multiple smell tech things at like GDC and SIGCHI and stuff like, and it's basically like getting maced by your computer. It's not a good time. But touch, we're kind of like, we're very, very vaguely okay at. We are very good at making things vibrate in different ways.
That's pretty
We've had
easy,
a lot of a lot of practice at that through Gamepad Rumble, and now through these new sort of HD Rumble things that we get in like VR controllers and Joy-Cons and DualSense controllers that are using like LRAs or VCAs or something like that.
What do those terms mean? Sorry, before we go on.
Oh, okay. Sorry. So, in like the old gamepads from like the 2000s and stuff, those used what we called ERMs, eccentric rotational motors. So you basically put a weight on the end of the motor and then you spin it around real quick.
Right.
And that was how we used to make Rumble. Now, There we use these mostly things called voice coil actuators, VCAs.
Mhm.
So instead of having to spin up a weight, you basically have something that's akin to a speaker or a subwoofer in your controller that you can actually just play audio buffers through. It moves much faster, and that's how we get things like that click feeling, like when you're on a modern trackpad or something like that,
Mhm.
even though there's no mechanical in there.
Right.
So yeah, they're basically like the new big thing in haptics, but they're still basically vibrotactile. Like we don't have much in the way of, for instance, like thermohaptics.
Mhm.
Like your controller doesn't really get like warmer when you're in like a volcano level or something like that. Like
Mm.
we have to basically break everything down into what can we translate through vibration, which is there's so many more types of touch than that. And that's kind of what butt plug is about, is like, let's take this one particular niche of haptics and see what happens if we try to create a language around it. And
Right.
so far, I would say we have failed spectacularly, but we had to try. Uh, because it's the thing about trying to write software for this specific hardware is that
Mhm.
there's no standards.
Right.
So it's not like they're like a joystick where there's buttons and like digital and analog sticks and things like
Mhm.
that.
Mhm.
No, we've got, well, maybe you've got a vibrator, or maybe you've got something to move back and forth, or oh, someone made this new thing with like an air bladder in it.
Right.
And we have to, because the whole idea of the library is we like, of those 500 and some toys that we develop for, I would say 90% of those are just vibrators.
Sure.
And
Sure.
much like everyone else, we're good at saying, okay, make this thing vibrate. But it's that other 10% where something like moves back and forth or expands or does something weird. Like I just got a lubrication shooter actually that goes on one of the machines that I have.
Okay.
And now I have to figure out like, how do I add this to our language
Mhm.
in a way that will be useful for developers?
Mhm.
But like it's this huge balance that you get in any sort of physical interface device. Like this
Mhm.
is why we don't see a lot of like new types of joysticks either,
Mhm.
because a joystick you would plan to use it with the game, but then you have to develop games to use the joystick, and then you have to like get developers to want to do that, and it's this whole cycle that's just really hard to develop around.
Mhm.
So I would say, like, while our project's been going for this long, we're like three, about to be four versions into our protocol specification, which is what lays all this stuff down.
Mhm.
We're still at the early days, and we're still learning a lot.
Right. Yeah, you make a good example there about convincing developers to do things. This is a problem that exists with the existence of the DualSense controller and then the Xbox One controller, which structurally hasn't really changed since since the original Xbox, really.
Yeah, yeah, just yeah.
Like the DualSense is, I'm a really big fan of the DualSense. It is a great controller. And games that are PlayStation 5 first or on PC that have those PS5 features, you could do some like crazy things like FF16. When you open a door, the triggers actually like get like it's harder to push them as you open the door further. Or Stellar Blade, where there's a thing where you're fishing. I turned it off because it makes fishing impossible. When you have a fish on the hook, the trigger vibrates. It makes
Yeah.
it impossible to do the fishing minigame, but it's really cool.
Yeah, I mean, that's the cool thing. Like, you can get that stuff in there, but I mean, those are like on like AAA games or first party games or whatever else. Like, I mean, I work on non-intimate haptics also, and I like back with all of those boxes of sex toys, I have all of this old haptics hardware that they tried. Like I have this thing sitting on my desk right now because I'm like trying to donate it to a video game museum called the Third Space Fest. It was like a flat. I think it came out like 2008. It was like a flak jacket that you wore. It had little air bladders in it. So that whenever you were like shot in a game, it would like the air bladder would just go poof, and it would like
Oh.
Yeah, it would push the air out. So you were actually supposed to be able to feel like sort of percussive haptics against yourself. It actually just made you feel like a big roll of bubble wrap that someone was like popping. Uh, and they couldn't get any game developers to support it. I've got the Novant Falcon, which was a really cool haptic device that came out in the late 2000s, early 2010s. That was used for like feeling like actual forces in 3D. Oh, it was so cool. There's a fantastic Half-Life 2 integration for it. So you could actually like feel the weight of stuff you were picking up with the gravity gun and whatnot. It was so cool. But it was $300. It took up a good square foot of your desk, or like cubic foot of your desk, really. And no one supported it. So they went out of business.
Well, for anyone who's curious about that, LGR has a video on it.
Yeah, and I wrote the open source drivers for it. So.
Ah, nice.
Yeah.
I was not aware of either of these devices. I know people have talked about wanting to do like, hey, get shot in a video game, you obviously don't want to feel like you're actually being shot, right? But you want to feel something. Or like you're playing like with the VR boxing stuff, for example, is another good example. Like, you want to notice that you've been hit. The, like, true end game of that is when you can start doing, like, grappling. Like, that is... No one has any idea how you'd even begin to approach that problem.
Yeah, so instead I have decided to solve grappling of a different kind. Because that's like one of the things that I do get for free from working with the type of hardware that I do is brain chemistry. The great thing, like, it's like that's the thing, like when you're playing a game and the haptics are supposed to go along with it, you want the haptics to match the game.
Right.
So it's like if the vibration doesn't match up, like while you're riding a horse, you're going to notice that, possibly. Sure. But the great thing about working with intimate devices and sex toys and whatever else is, you already kind of got the horny juices flowing. When you start using that stuff, like your brain's already like awash in dopamine, so we can fudge a lot, a lot of the reaction there. It's like it doesn't really need to be 1-to-1 because it's just something's going on that's kind of matching the scene, and people are great with that. So.
So, what is the actual structure of the project? Like, I know the buttplug repo has like a bunch of different links out to various other things, but yeah, generally, just how is it structured?
Okay, so there are a few different layers here. So first off, there is buttplug. Buttplug is the software library. This is the part that developers use in their software. And it's named buttplug because that's the part that's embedded in software. After that, though, everything above that we call interface, so INTIFACE. So that brand was made specifically because that's all of our user-facing applications. That's what we use to actually get on things like the Google Play Store, the Apple Store. We're not going to be able to get in there with a name like buttplug. So we had to create something new. So buttplug is the bottom layer. Okay. And then on top of that, there's a thing we have called interface engine, which is our little command line interface, which I don't normally talk about. But once again, this is a Linux thing. I can do that. Okay. So that's just like no GUI, no nothing. Just run our engine that does all the hardware access, and then you can connect software into that.
So
and then
if you
on top
wanted to write
of that,
like a bash script that controlled it and just did that, like you could.
Yeah, or it's really popular with people running on headless devices. So like they wanted to make just like a little Raspberry Pi or something that's sitting there listening and handling device connection routing. And then on top of that, we have Interface Central, which is our actual GUI. So that's written in Flutter, runs Mac, Linux, Windows, Android, iOS, all off the same code base. It really is just a very fancy command line argument former for engine. But we need that because basically we just act as a hardware hub, like and then provide like a WebSocket based network access into that. But and really the ecosystem is all the stuff that connects into Engine or Central. And that's kind of where all the fun stuff is.
So you also have like a bunch of additional stuff outside the project. That's on like the awesome butt plug repo.
Yes.
So there's a bunch of integrations into various existing software. There's game library integrations. There's different programming language bindings. Go over a bit of that stuff.
Yeah, so this is really where our community ecosystem comes in. So we have people writing software to do everything for, like, I would say the most popular and kind of obvious use for the library within the kind of content domain that we're in is what's called video synchronization. So there is an accidental standard known as FunScript. Which is basically a JSON file that has commands that go along with certain videos where you might see, like, reciprocal back and forth movement. So these fun scripts basically track the movement in those videos and then can replay that movement on some of the hardware that we support. Yeah, FunScript came around. I kind of helped put that together, actually, back in 2017, right after we started the project, and now it's the lingua franca of PornSync. And kind of fun side fact, just off on this little rabbit hole. These days, when you see sex toy companies talking about AI integration, this is usually where that happens. The big sort of thrust for AI in sex toys is automatically doing the motion encoding from a video down to FunScript.
Right. Because
you want to minimize the encoding time. Doing that human time, there's usually a multiplier. Like every 1 second of video might take a person multiple seconds or something like that. Right. And they want to be able to just, like, you send a video to this, it's automatically tracked for you. So when you hear major companies talk about, we've got AI integration, that's usually what they mean.
Right, I did see a video. I think you might have shared it, maybe, or someone else. It was it might have been a while ago. I don't know. I just saw the video yesterday. There was this. There was saying the AI nonsense, and there was like a device that was like, going up and down, and they were like, "Hey, this automatically tracks the video. It can, like, work out what's happening in there. It can be run on top of games as well. So even if the game doesn't have integration, it can detect things happening in that."
Yeah. There's been a lot of stuff coming out of CES this week where there's been some interesting devices come out, some interesting claims made. Some of them are true, some of them are not.
That's CES for you.
I mean, that's just the way this works. So video. So like I said, video synchronization's huge. Really, what Buttplug is popular for is game mods.
Right.
And this can be anything from, like, I wrote a generic mod that we call the game haptics router. That will literally just hook into any game that doesn't have anti-cheat and can send gamepad rumble to a gamepad, and it reroutes the rumble to a toy. So that was just like a general, we'll work with a bunch of things, piece of software. But we have a bunch of people writing really specific mods. I mean, the most famous ones are like Ultra Kill and
I was gonna get into
Company.
that one, yeah.
Yeah, Lethal Company, Stardew Valley, Hollow Knight. Somewhat, like, just in the past week, we've gotten both Balatro and DCS World.
What is? Wait, what does the Balatro one do? I'm kind of. Is it like when you score?
I actually just did. I did a Twitch stream on this like the day it came out.
Mhm.
Right now, it is just whenever your score is on fire, whenever you get like the above the current levels max and
Mhm.
your score to catches on fire, your vibrator goes off. But we want to
Right.
add more
Okay.
stuff to it.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah, it's silly. Like I never know where this thing's gonna
Mhm.
where people are gonna put the library, and honestly, that's what makes it so much fun.
Well, yeah. Just looking at the list, like there's obviously you've Ultra Kill there. You said Stardew Valley, Cult of the Lamb, TF2. Obviously Skyrim because it's Skyrim. Um,
God.
Beat
Yeah.
Saber. And then there's obviously the kinds of games you would expect it to be, and the adult games where
Hmm.
like it
Yeah.
that's the kind of integration you want.
Yeah. Oh, certainly. I mean, honestly, no. The type of integration I want is the weird shit posts.
Okay,
I
yeah,
like
but
I have like there's a large number of users that want this stuff in like Heat and FarmD and 3DX chat and all of that stuff and like Vertimate and whatnot. And I was like, well, that's obvious. That's
sure.
boring. Who's gonna use that shit? No, no, no.
Mhm.
I like that's why it's like I'm so
Oh
happy
yeah, the
about like
CS
DCS
here,
World.
yeah.
It's like okay, like I mean, the one that I still want that we just got a request for. I want to be in War Thunder. I so want to be in War
I
Thunder
did
just
see your
so
tweet about that.
yeah, just so I can release like unreleased sex toy specs on the War Thunder forums. Yeah.
For
Yeah.
anyone who doesn't know the context there is a very long history of repeated incidences of people. I guess they're in the Air Force. I don't know how they get the documents. Releasing basically top secret military specification documents on various aircraft and tanks and other things. And they're like, hey, here's the spec sheet, add it to the game. They're like, no, we can't do that.
Yeah, it's
It's
just so
funny
like
though.
that's it's the fun part about this library is like
Mm.
stuff like that happens and it's all like people just well, I mean, and the latest thing that got us talking was that someone has put in a pull request on a 3DS simulator
And
to
a
add
3DS.
butt plug support to it. And it's just like, I mean, if I can't say that I think that's the best way to implement this, but if the developers want to bring it in, hey,
Mhm.
it's like more power to them. So
Yeah, for sure. Like, once you have something like this out there, people are just going to run wild with it. Obviously, you're going to
yeah.
get those normal, sensible integrations, but, like, you know, game modders. Game modders just do what they want. Like, I play a lot of Marvel Rivals right now. Within the first day, there was replacing Winter Soldier with CJ, right?
Oh yeah.
Or like,
Yeah.
all manner of Squirrel Girl mods.
I have been so sad that they shut down mods so quick. And I mean, I get why they did, certainly.
Yeah.
But I didn't have a chance to get my stuff together in
There
there.
is, to my understanding, there's like a workaround, but like that probably kind of TOS, and I get it.
Yeah.
It's a multiplayer game. It's a PvP anti-cheat shooter, right? Like it makes sense. And the game already has a
Mhm.
bit of a cheating problem anyway, and I can think of some pretty simple ways that you can give yourself a advantage if you can, you could just start replacing the map with invisible walls, right? Things like
Mhm.
that. Like I get it, but it does take some of the fun away.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so what actually? Wait, did we? Oh, right. The language integration. Didn't even get to that. The language
Yes.
bindings.
Oh, yeah. So our whole protocol, as it were, is really just JSON packets flying back and forth. We don't do a lot of really data dense transfer. Like this is not a protocol that is made for closing like high frequency, high accuracy control loops. Like don't control your car's braking system with butt plug. But because like I mean a lot of the hardware that we work with, like it barely works in the first place. It's like, okay, so there's 4 vibration levels to this thing, and it'll take 3 commands per second. Oh boy. So we don't really push a ton of data. But the great thing about this is though, so yeah, we just use JSON and then that flies over WebSockets because we wanted to make this accessible to as many platforms as possible. So not only does like buttplug itself is written in Rust, because if the concurrency is going in your butt, it better be fearless. And Uh, yeah, it's been a very fun language to work in. I used to be the device interfaces lead on Firefox at Mozilla. So I learned Rust at the mothership, and so we started in Rust. Well, actually, we started in JavaScript and C#, and then we moved to Rust once async came in with 136 in 2019. But we got C#, we got JavaScript, TypeScript, we've got C++, we've got Python, Haskell. We actually compiled to WASM. So the Rust library that does all of our hardware access, I absolutely did this as a stunt hack, and now people use it seriously, and I'm really regretting that. So all of our hardware access that works in Bluetooth works in a web browser that supports web Bluetooth. So you can run purely in a web browser through our WASM library. I wanted to do it because I was like, I think I can get it done. It'll be funny.
Why not?
Yeah. So, and we're seeing more language and game engine integrations are also super important. So, Unity, Unreal, Godot, Twine. I think we got a Game Maker one now.
I see RPG Maker here.
Yeah, like really, we want to make it as easy as possible for anyone to bring these integrations into their library. And I'm not saying we're like anywhere near finished with that yet. Like there's still a lot of pain points within the library, but we're certainly working on it. And that is our like overall goal though, is just make it so that you can do things as easy as possible.
So, okay, you mentioned swapping over to Rust there, and every time I talk to someone who does Rust, you know, I've got to ask them because it leads to fun. Look, I get fun comments from it because you have these people who are just insufferable about hating Rust, and it's so fun.
Oh yeah, I love them so much. Yeah.
Especially when they have no idea what they're talking about. That's even better. When they're just like they know developer words, but they're not actually. They have no computer science background.
Yep. Yeah. I started with Rust around the 0.5 era.
You're really early then. Okay.
Well, so me and Nico, the Rust like design lead for many years, may still be for all I know. We started at Mozilla on the same day. Because we were both in the research group. I started, he was on Rust, I was on Firefox OS, which at the time was just starting.
That was the thing. Forgot about that one.
Yeah. Hi, first full-time engineer on that one.
Sorry, sidetrack. I need to just bring this one up. Firefox OS was Mozilla's attempt to compete with Android. You probably haven't heard of it for a while because it was abandoned in 2015.
It's no, it is still up and running to this day.
Oh?
So it is called KaiOS these days. KaiOS.
Okay.
It doesn't run on smartphones, it runs on what we call feature phones. So there was a company, like, since this was Mozilla, of course all of Firefox OS was open sourced. There were there's a lot of opinions and a lot of events that happened around the project that
Mhm.
made it go the way that it did that I'm not going to get into right now because that's another interview entirely. But someone came through, picked it up, and put it on feature phones, and now it's in hundreds of millions of phones in India.
Wow. Okay, I had no idea
So,
about that.
yes.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah, it still exists. There's still some of the original engineers from Firefox OS that moved over and work on that. It's not a Mozilla project anymore. It's a different company now.
Mhm.
But yeah.
Wow, I have to dig into that one. I might have to do a video on that. That's actually really cool. Sorry, we got sidetracked. You were Rust.
Yes,
You
Rust.
were one of the early people
Rust.
involved in that.
Yeah, well, I mean, I was just trying to use it back then. I had nothing to do with like the actual development or
Sure.
anything. I played around like with Rust. I played around with Servo as it was being developed. Actually, funny enough, so in writing butt plug, when we moved over to Rust, there was no cross-platform Bluetooth LE library in Rust. So I had to take a whole bunch of half-done projects and kind of smush them together into a project we now called BTLE plug. And so that is now the most popular Bluetooth LE library in Rust. And
Oh,
the
wait.
Maco.
Didn't you get into it? Wasn't it like someone who was posted
Oh,
about this?
yeah.
Who was like, I didn't
Yeah,
realize it
there
had anything to do
was-
with buttplug.io, and they got very angry about it?
Yeah, we had a PR from someone who was trying to, they were trying to fix a Windows 10 compatibility issue for like an old version of Windows 10, and they did it by like dropping an error. And I was like, can we not do that? I kind of like my errors. Can we do it this way? And so I just asked for a fix on this PR, and the person was like, no, you ran butt plug. I had to look up what butt plug means, and I don't like that. And it was one of the more interesting responses I've gotten to a PR a PR fix request. But what can you do? I mean, like the funny thing about BTLE plug is I've actually had friends that work in like the defense industry tell me that they've been writing Rust for defense and government contracts, and you have to actually enumerate like all of the open source projects you use, and they have not been able to use BTLE plug because it sounds too much like butt plug, and the government didn't like that. And I was just like, oh hell yeah. I just want to imagine the meeting where the government, like the military, comes in and is like, "Nope, you cannot use that library. We cannot have that in a military grant." I wasn't specifically aiming for pacifism with my naming here, but okay.
Considering some of the other dumb military development stories, like that's not even like the top of the I've heard. You've probably heard people meme about this one a bunch of times, like the missile control system that was built where they left a memory leak in it because the missiles would land before the memory leak caused problems.
Oh yeah. You just need to know where you're going. You don't really have to worry about what's going to happen when you get there. Oh yeah.
Oh god. Sorry, I keep
But
getting,
yeah,
I keep
like
getting,
on
I
Rust,
keep
yeah.
sidetracking you. Sorry about that.
No, it's fine. So anyways, yeah. So BTLE plug, which is the Bluetooth library we use in butt plug now, the Mac OS Bluetooth core comes from Servo. So like there's just like all sorts of interplay between like my library and what I did at Mozilla and everything else. But at the end of the day, I spent 20 some years writing C++, and I just got sick of finding new ways to shoot myself in the foot with every single spec. I mean, I've also done multiple versions of C. I, by trade, am a firmware engineer. And I just got sick of fucking up, and Rust lets me do that less. And that's it. That's all.
Yeah.
So...
Yeah, I always hear these dumb arguments like, "Oh, well, that's just a skill issue." Like, yeah, it is.
Yeah,
okay.
It's like I use these computer things to make my life easier. Like, and if there's a thing I can do that makes my life easier on the make my life easier box, I will do that.
Like,
I don't have time to like prove my shit because
yeah.
like in a point arithmetic or whatever.
Like, if you want to, like, an example that I've been using is, let's say you want to, like, cut a piece of wood. Would you rather use a tape measure and some machine to cut it, or just, like, eye it and use a handsaw? Like, you can do both. You can do great work
Yeah.
with either solution people have. But one of them's going to take away a lot of mistakes.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. And I mean, especially in embedded, like that's kind of like the next frontier that I'm really excited about. Like Rust embedded and that ability to really make sure like you know where your memory is when you can and regulate like permissions to like what's writing to what pins and whatnot. Oh, it's fantastic. So I'm looking forward to making less mistakes, and if that makes some people mad, well, they can go fuck themselves, but not with my software.
I remember when Rust was first gaining popularity, because I was in university in 2016, something like that. And
Yeah.
I had this one friend who was this die-hard Rust fan who was like I remember, like, if 1.0 was out by then. I don't remember exactly where along the timeline it is, but like people weren't really talking about Rust like they are today. You know, in the Linux space, you see all of these rewrite projects in Rust. You know, it's just the same project written in Rust again. But like, there's one guy who's like, Rust is great, Rust is awesome, and you know, hey, whatever. And I kind of feel like, I don't know if the same thing's gonna happen, but I kind of feel like Zig is in that same place today. Like, you have those couple of people who are like, Zig is amazing, Zig is so great, and I feel like in like 10 years from now, you're probably gonna see that same level of adoption. I don't know, because Rust obviously has solved a lot of these problems that, you know, weren't really being solved in this way before. Maybe it won't happen, but I do feel like there is going to be some sort of ecosystem there where Zig is able to thrive as well. And by that point, there's going to be another language that comes along. There's always going to be, like, you know, the new language that is the exciting thing that people want to learn. Like, in the 90s, that was Java. Then, you know, C# came along, and, you know, JavaScript came along, and there's always the new exciting thing.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, and it just depends on the domain too. Like it's some things that Rust is good for. There's some things that it's not good for. I mean, and there's people that it's like, there's a lot of people that just want to like get shit done, and they end up over in Go or whatever else. And there's always going to be multiple correct tools for whatever job you're doing, and whatever works, it works. I mean, like I use Rust for butt plug and a bunch of other stuff, but it's like I'm still also coding in C#, or weirdly enough, I mean, with Flutter, I'm doing Dart, and it's fine. Or which feels really weird coming out of Mozilla after we went after Dart so goddamn hard in the early 2010s. But that was a different time. So like I use tons of different languages, and that's fine. It's just whatever gets stuff done. That's the important part.
Yeah, there's no point looking at your tools as like a sports team, right? Like, you don't have to go to bat for like, oh, hey, you know, C++, greatest language ever, C, whatever. Like, these different languages, it's, you know, again, let's put it in another context. Let's say you have a screwdriver and a hammer. Like, you're not going to argue which one's better, right? Like, they do different jobs. And maybe some jobs they can do the same thing, right? Like, you can secure pieces of wood together with a screwdriver or a hammer. But, like, you don't have to argue which one's better. Like, you can use both of them.
Yeah, no, and I mean, and then you get into all sorts of questions of like legacy and everything else too. Because it's like, yeah, we saw this I used to be pretty big in the Emacs community. I mean, I wrote a few, I'm probably most well known for writing the sex toy control in Emacs. That would be Deldo, Deldo. So that's like, oh my God, that's like 15 years old now. But
What is that? README 6, December 19th, 2009.
Oh God. Okay. Yeah, 15 years. So that was well before I wrote butt plug. I still need to port dildo to butt plug, which is one of those fun phrases I get to say. Um, but even in the Emacs ecosystem, though, it's like, okay, well, we're going to rewrite it in Guile. Now there's a project to, of course, rewrite Emacs in Rust. All the internal languages of like, oh, I don't want to use eLisp anymore and everything else. It's like, but legacy, everyone is still using eLisp.
Yeah.
So it's at the end of the day, it's like sometimes legacy wins, sometimes new tools win. At any point in the future, all of these new tools are going to be legacy that someone is bitching about. So life goes
that's
on.
if you look at the web, that's jQuery, right? Like, jQuery's been around for
Lord,
so
yes.
long, and people,
Yeah.
it's not the exciting thing anymore. But there are so many sites, they're just on jQuery. A lot of government sites, never going to change.
I just saw there was a something that was like trending Hacker News earlier this week that was all PHP and jQuery, and it was like a new project that the author was really excited about. People were like, "Really?" Like, well, I mean, I guess it works.
Yeah, like
You don't really need it, but
there's COBOL still out in production, right? Like there's always going to be these projects that are just, it works, right? Like it's fine, doesn't need to change.
And then you get abominations like Node COBOL.
So what?
Yeah, there's node bindings to COBOL. There's lots of node bindings to COBOL.
Okay, sure. Why not?
So just in case you want to combine your JavaScript and your COBOL on your mainframe.
Okay. But hey, if you have a COBOL job, like never let them convince you to port it to something else. Like that, they cannot get rid of you. There are so few COBOL developers.
They're making a lot of money though.
Yeah.
But anyways, yeah, that's like, so Rust for butt plug. It was just, it's what I like working in, and that's the important part for this library more than anything.
You
Because
gotta
like
enjoy
we
the project
don't
you work on.
Yeah, you have to enjoy the project you're working on. You have to be able to trust your tools. And like we don't have, like, I honestly don't allow a ton of contribution to our core library because this is one of the really weird parts about running this project. Multiple people I know have learned programming to use butt plug, and that's cool as hell. Like that's like one of the I feel is the major accomplishments of building this project. It's like, okay, cool. People have found a way to build something for themselves through this technology. That's neat. It's when they show up to my Discord and they're like, "Oh, this project's so cool. I want to contribute to the library. I've never written Rust before." And it's like,
yeah.
That's nice, but you realize you're saying you want to put your hello world in someone's butt.
Right.
Like there's this really interesting disconnect that's one of the major lessons for me from this project of how many people don't understand that like literally all software is physical. At the end of the day, the code you write is causing electrons to go somewhere. But in our case, it's causing electrons to go a lot of places that then trigger motors to go places.
Right.
And trying to get this idea through that it's like, I appreciate you wanting to work on this, but go write some stuff with our library, go learn Rust, go learn all that stuff. Come back when you've got some experience. Because there's kind of some high stakes that happen with this stuff.
Right.
And I'm not saying we are not we are not bug free. We are not perfect, just like any other software project. Like hell, for the past there was like 8 months of last year where we had a bug with this piece of hardware called the Levin Solace. So it is basically a tube that moves back and forth. And there was a certain way that it was being used in VR chat where the stop signal would cause it to move as fast as possible.
I see. Yeah.
That was not great.
No,
That was
no.
not good at all. And I really didn't realize like the severity of the problem. We did get it fixed. It does work fine now. There was a workaround for it during that time too, but it was just like, even then it's like, oh, that's not good. And I mean, that's also why we limit the types of hardware we support. So in butt plug, like obviously most of it's vibrators of different shapes and sizes. There's what we call strokers, which are things moved back and forth. There's machines, which are probably the most aggressive of the hardware that we support. And then there's just a bunch of little weird crap in there. But like, I don't actually support like electrostimulation. So we have a lot of people who are like, but why don't you support shock collars? I would love to have my shock collar. I was just like, oh, well, so that's one version of this. I'll get to the other one.
Yeah, okay.
It's like the problem with shock collars though is like, first off, I don't know where you're going to use it. And there are places where, and usually when you're buying a shock collar, you're buying it for a dog, like something with like fur on it. And when you put that on bare skin, that's not what that was spec'd for, and that can be bad.
Well, yeah,
and also people are
also-
buying them off of like fucking AliExpress too.
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, what sort of firmware limitations are built into a device like that you couldn't overspec with your code? Yeah.
Like I actually bought one years ago that I was just checking the firmware out on, and it's like the stop signal was external. You just sent a command and it would shock for 10 seconds or until you would tell it to stop. And it was just like that no. So there
Also,
are projects.
Like, you writing the code for that is going to be annoying because you would have to shock yourself to make sure things are working.
No. I would just put oscilloscope probes.
Okay, that's fair.
Yeah. No, that's I've gotten very good at figuring like I don't have to put vibrators places. I just have an accelerometer board on my desk.
You can tell what that's doing.
Yeah, and the thing is there are butt plug like projects for this stuff. Like there's a project called OpenShock that is like butt plug except for shock collar, and more power to them. Like I'm not trying to be judgy here, just I don't want to write the software for that and then be responsible.
Yeah,
when
you don't
want to
hurt someone with that.
Yeah,
like I get what you're saying about the Well, again, with the firmware limitation stuff, right? Like, if you, like, let's say you have, like, a wand, and that accidentally goes to, like, 100%. Like, yes, that's a problem, but, like, you can stop that very quickly yourself if that happens.
Yes.
But, like, you know, if you cause a bug with, like, a FOSS machine, like, that can legitimately hurt someone.
Yes. They are usually, like, all the 4 machines I have are usually rated on their motors so that if you backdrive it enough, it'll stop. So it's there. I mean, there are still chances for.
Well, if it went from like 5% to 100% in an instant, right? Like that
it would not be fun.
Someone. No,
it would not be fun. Well, most of these are just like. There's things about how the control schemes and stuff of these motors work too that are most are really stupid. It's just pump more power through it, but even then at like full power, you can still stop it.
Right.
Pretty much with your pelvic muscles, if you need to. But even so, yes, like that's why I say like we didn't actually release support for full-on machines until about a year ago. We've had it ready to go for several years, but we needed to put in the feature that allowed you to set the maximum speed. So if someone tells our library, well, set to 100% speed, you need to actually be able to say what 100% is. If there's like 20 steps on that machine and you don't want it to go past 10, then your 100% should be 10. And that's what we try to set. And then, we just do a lot of testing on those machines to make sure that it's like, okay, you can't set around that. You can't like go around that or whatever else. Cause we don't want people getting hurt. And it's, and we try to like, just keep it fun. So And there's other, like I said, there's other hardware out there though that people do want to use, and I'm happy to like on the eSTEM side. Like, not only are there shot collars, there are actually devices that are similar to like TENS units, the things that like you put on like sore muscles and
Oh,
stuff.
yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So there are devices, there are eSTEM boxes made specifically for sexual usage of that. They're more well known in sort of the BDSM community, and they're usually also used by sort of the older community too. Like basically, as you age, you get nerve loss, and so being able to directly stimulate those nerves is pleasurable to people that may have had nerve loss. So you do see that stuff around there, but even then, it is still sending electrical signals, and it's not really something I want to regulate in the same software where people are buying like $10 vibrators off Taobao.
Right.
Uh, like it's too hard to get the spread of guarantees across that. So we err on the side of cheap and mass produced, but trying not specifically to be too dangerous.
Right. You don't want to have a news article written about you where you shocked someone to death.
Yes, exactly. I mean, and we've seen that happen anyways, because there was things like the QIUI or the cellmate as it was called in Europe and the US, which was a chastity cage. That was the one that there had been all sorts of rumors and stuff about that there was like the Bitcoin hacker. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, even before all of that happened, that hardware was a goddamn nightmare. Like they didn't. It would actually try to shock you if you removed it, but they didn't handle the materials correctly, so it can cause electrolytic burns on like those parts. Like it was a bad time. And that's that's why I just kind of try to steer clear of all that stuff. People are going to buy it. People are going to use it. There are going to be very successful businesses around it, and I will watch the money fly away over there.
So that sort of leads into like the next thing I want to ask. The scope of the project, because you already mentioned you don't want to touch like those sort of devices. I'm sure there are other things that are like maybe you'd be interested in, but either are too difficult to handle, or other things obviously that could be too dangerous to mess with. You just don't want to have in the project.
Yeah, it's scoping is weird on this. Because we never know what's going to come out. There's no standard for sex toys of like, well, here's these 5 different things you can do, and that is sex.
Right.
So we don't know what people are going to put out. Like, okay, now here's this new toy that moves on these like 2 different axes, but has like 6 different degrees of freedom this way. So our sort of the toy that I use when I talk about this example and things that I would like to support but are difficult, there's a toy called the SR6. So this is put together by a developer named Tempest VR on Patreon. So this is an open source 3D printable toy. It is basically a thing that moves a fleshlight around. So you can screw if we go the unbranded way, it's called an Ona hole. Fleshlight's the sort of like the US brand that everyone knows, but you can put any latex hole that you get off like Toy Demon or whatnot in this, and it will move it on multiple rotational and translational axes with pressure regulation, heater, lubrication, and it's all 3D printed. So you could just like crank one out on your 3D printer. I'm actually going to be building one on my Twitch channel at some point. Because on Twitch, I actually do this stuff on Twitch, but it's in the guise of fox movement. I have like all these little stuffed foxes that I put on these things, and they ride around on them and all. I've got a
GIF open. Oh, they've got a GIF on their wiki.
Yeah.
So up, down, left, right, forwards, backwards, roll left and right, pitch forwards and backwards, twist. And okay, yeah, I can see why this is difficult.
Yeah, so it's like in my library, I have to scope for both a vibrator with like 5 speeds and that. And I have to give developers a way to develop for the crappy little vibrator and the thing that does 900 different things on 900 different axes
Right.
and then can like shoot lube and make it hot and everything else. And that's really, really hard. And the interesting part is it's like I've just taken a niche of a niche of a niche of it. I used to be part of, and kind of still am part of this thing called the Haptics Industry Forum, which is a whole bunch of haptics companies. And one of the things, their initiatives was actually defining haptics for the USB HID spec. So that is like the big industry spec of how does stuff communicate through HID. This is like what your operating system deals with to talk to mice and keyboards and things like that. And they were trying to define haptics for that. And it's like, how? That's such a huge problem. Like, yeah, you can do like little things like click and rumble and whatnot, but when you define haptics, it's touch. It's touch. There's friction and there's movement and there's squeezing and there's temperature. It's like that just like the scope on that I couldn't even figure out. So that was part of the reason that like with butt plug, it's like, okay, well, I'll just see how hard a subset of this is, and it's really really hard. But we're doing what we can. So in terms of how we scope, we've got some weird devices. Like we support the Nintendo Joy-Con.
Yes.
By the way, do not put the Joy-Con in your butt.
Do not do that.
So Vice did an article on this already. Your butt and your whole body, you are basically a bag of meat and water. Radios hate meat and water. So don't put a radio in your butt, which feels really weird since I run a library called Butt Plug, all about putting radios in your butt. But ignore that part. Don't put a Joy-Con in your butt. But yeah, so we support Gamepad Rumble, which is Joy-Con, Xbox, things like that, because everyone has a gamepad, or everyone can easily get a gamepad. Like that is just great for and so it's like if you just want to know like what is it like to have a device that would work with our stuff, but you don't want to go buy one of those devices yet, you can just see what it looks like on a gamepad. And we're working on sensors now too. So because there are actually toys that have sensors in them. So one of the ones that's being touted at CES this week would be Levin's Mission 2, which has a vibrator that has depth sensors on it.
Okay, no, I think this. Yeah, I think that was also part of that demo where they had the male toy also connected to it.
Yes. Yeah. So there's also like Toy Sync, which has variable levels of working. But yeah, so there's toys like the Mission has like a touch sensor on it. There's toys with accelerometers on them. There's Kegel sizers, which are like toys that you can squeeze with a pelvic muscle. Those are very popular for people releasing versions of Flappy Bird for. Yes. So we're going to actually be integrating more of those sensors in our the next big version of our library, because we want people to be able to like speed run Elden Ring using nothing but their butt. Like the next dream is what GDQ can I be in?
GDQ. Actually, speaking of GDQ, I saw a speed. It was a 3-minute speed run of Big Rigs. They just brought that one in. The introduction of the speed run was longer than the speed run.
Yeah. GDQ was good this year.
Yeah. Scope.
Yeah, so we try to keep it to intimate devices, we could, because that's at the end of the day, we really are a user space HID layer. We are the much as like you have that core of your operating system that handles mice and keyboards and everything else. We could totally do that, but there's two of us. Like it's there's only so much time in the day, and that would be way too much. So we try to keep it scoped to these type of devices. And what that is, but that's still kind of a squishy area. Like like that was because a lot of people are like, but why do you support the Joy-Con? And really, it's because it rumbles. Like that was our first foray into this HD rumble with VCAs, and it has a really nice IMU on it. Like so, you get the. I'm sorry, an inertial measurement unit, and it has an acceleration and an accelerometer and a gyro on it.
Okay.
So, like being able to use that as a sensor in butt plug, like that might not sound like that would be in scope for us, but you like just rubber band one of those things to a fleshlight, and suddenly you've got a gesture controller. You could fire guns with that thing, like in your favorite FPS or something like that. So like that's why I say it's squishy. It's like if we find something that it's like, okay, that seems like a good idea, then yeah, we'll go ahead and add it. And I mean, also I am not past shit posts either. Like a couple of weeks ago, someone was posting about their Bluetooth enabled air fryer. And so we've been trying to figure out how we would add that to the library. Like, so you could like maybe like air fry your French fries with porn or something. Like that's the kind of thing we do. That's
yeah,
when you have this kind of power, why cure cancer?
Yeah. If you're gonna if we're gonna make everything a smart device, look, you might as well. Like I don't like smart fridges. I don't like smart grills. But hey, if it's gonna happen, if you're gonna give me internet connectivity or something or Bluetooth connectivity, might as well.
Yeah, might as well have fun with it.
So I'm sure the way that even if people didn't know about your project, I'm sure most people in the gaming space have probably heard of it because of Ultrakill, even if they don't know about Buttplug.io.
Yep. So, I should like to back way up. The way that I got started in all of this, back in 2005, I created this thing called the Sex Box, which was really I just drilled a couple of holes in an original Xbox controller, took the rumble motors out, wired the motor wires to some jacks, and hooked vibrators to that, and created the first rumble-based vibration system for passing through rumble to toys. And that made it that went viral for 2005, which means I got on like Boing Boing and shit. I may have gotten on Slashdot, I think. And I ended up taking that and hooking it to Burnout, the racing game where you're supposed to crash the car.
I love that.
And yeah, like, so that became kind of my own little version of JG Ballard's Crash. And I showed that at GDC and all. And so we've had like this whole thing of interaction of sex toys and video games has been something I've been doing for 20 years now. So Ultrakill came along. And this was so weird because, so this was just on Twitter back when it was still Twitter. So Joy, Shami, was just tweeted something about Lovence and Ultrakill, and I was like, okay, I've never heard of this Ultrakill game. I'll go take a look. Oh, it's Unity. I can crank a mod for that real quick. And so I was like live tweeting like me putting together this mod, and then one of the Ultrakill devs, Peter, reached out and was like, you know, we're already building a mod, right? And I was like, the fuck? Really? For your own game? not as a well, okay, kind of as a joke. Okay, sure, whatever. So I put mine aside, but Peter released his mod, which I ended up doing some patches on later, and then I found out what Ultra Kill is, and more importantly, I found out what the Ultra Kill community is. Oh my God! So those of you not familiar with the Ultra Kill community, they're horny. They're really horny. There's a minority of them that are not horny, that are really, really, really mad at the horny ones. For those of you that are not familiar with Ultra Kill, the game, it is a boomer shooter that's a whole bunch of other things too. You play a robot that's running through hell that gets its health back by bathing in the blood of the enemies that it shoots and all. It's a fantastic speedrunning boomer shooter. I really recommend checking it out. It's a great game. But yeah, the community was definitely what drove this. Like, this was a combination of the right mod for the right people. Right. And the developers releasing it themselves. Like, it wasn't like it actually being the people that made the game really pushing this. And that's been one of the biggest things that's happened in the history of the project. That's kind of like, it is now, people talk about, when anyone talks about a butt plug mod, there's two things that'll come up. It'll either be, oh, they're doing Ultra Kill again, or, oh, they're doing chess again. Those are the two things. So yeah, it's been great though. It's been super fun. I still get pings from the Ultra Kill community like a couple times a month of someone finally like yet another person speed running Ultra Kill with a butt plug. And I was like, good for you. I'm glad you're having fun.
Like the first 100 you sent, they were cool, but like after that, you know.
I mean, it just cute. Like, yeah, it just the gift that keeps on giving.
No, I like, my understanding is that like people in the community had like joked about a sex update for like a couple of years before that, and then
yes, that was a long running joke, and now sex update, like Ultra Kill made that a thing because then Cult of the Lamb did the sex update thing, but then they actually had sex-ish in the game. They had to stay PG-13. That was also that was when I did my Cult of the Lamb mod, because I was just like, no, if you're saying you're getting a sex update, god damn it, you're getting a sex update. My Cult of the Lamb mod is not good, but it is a sex update.
Well, you know, it's something. That's a really fun game as well. I love Cult of the Lamb.
Oh, yeah, no, it was fantastic. My mod, it just adds a follower interaction that if you choose it, your vibrator goes off and your follower pukes until you restart the game. Okay. I kept planning on going back to it, and I have all these people that are like, why did you do this? This isn't fun. I'm like, oh no, just the knowledge that people are using this is very fun for me. I do need to actually go fix that though.
Oh man, that's I love the stuff that's being built around this. It's so cool. Like,
it's so much fun. Yeah.
I like, you know, I always say a lot, like, people take themselves way too seriously, right? Like, this is a project where you like, yeah, you got to take something serious. You don't want to hurt someone with like some weird broken firmware that lets you do things that are way outside what the device should be doing. But outside of that, like, it's just fun.
I mean, you have to have fun with it. Like, and this is not to say I don't want people doing serious stuff with it. By all means. I mean, like, I've gotten wonderful messages from people who are like, your library has allowed me to like be more intimate in this long distance relationship, or it's allowed me to act out things that I can't do because my interests are not physically possible. I mean, I'm once again sitting here in VR chat, land of things that are not physically possible. And yes, there are several plugins for my library in here.
No doubt. Yeah, I would not be surprised about that.
OSC.toys. Anyways, yeah, it's like there's all sorts of really cool, serious potential. I don't want to downplay that, but it is also really fun to just shitpost, have fun with, see what we can add the contexts to, and we try to do it in a safe way. Like anytime someone is asking us to well, it's like, can you add toy support to this massively multiplayer online game with random lobbies or something like that. We're like, yeah, no, don't do that. Like, please don't use our stuff in situations where the consents context is really murky or something. And I mean, the best we can do is just say, please don't. It is open source software. And I'm not going to say we haven't had like our issues in the past too, but we do what we can, both to like facilitate the people that want to do stuff for relationships or interests or whatever else, and for just the people that are just like, this 3DS emulator really needs butt plugs.
Right. Like I did see you replied under one of the comments where someone was like, I think it was that AI too, where it was like, are they doing anything to stop it from working on videos of people that aren't consenting? It's just like, that's just not a thing that's possible, right?
Oh God. I mean, the biggest problem with the internet is the people on it.
Sure.
This is so way back. I worked on Second Life. I was an employee at Linden Lab.
Sure.
And yeah, I spent 2 years as an employee on Second Life as a cube, no less. That's why there's this little cube right here on my collar. I was Cube Linden. And so I have seen what people do in virtual worlds, and I don't ever want to be anywhere near having to manage a user-generated content platform again. And a library is sort of a user-generated content platform for software, especially the one that I put out. And you take what precautions you can. Like you do what you can for what we would call trust and safety or whatever else. But it's a fraught situation. It's difficult when you just like, you really want to put something out there and you really want to see people use it, but then you can't really go, no, not like that. So,
right. And even if you say no, not like that, right? Like it's open source. Somebody else could do it.
Yeah, that's the issue. Like, yeah, and that was like someone, as you said, someone was asking if like one of the major sex toy companies, well, pretty much this is a really freaky point you're gonna love. Almost all of the major sex toy companies now put out their own web browser.
What?
Yes. So it is very popular to rebrand Chromium with your sex toy.
Can you give me an example?
And Lovent has their own browser. I think it's called Playmate, or something like VibeMate.
Okay.
So I know Magic Motion puts one out. I don't know if Kiru puts one out. But yeah, there's like, so you basically repackage Chromium, rebrand it, and whenever you see a video element, it will just automatically ship it back to the company for AI processing and stuff. So basically it's a web browser that's supposed to specifically have like access to make it easier to use your sex toy, but it's also a fucking web browser. Like that's like this one of the central sources of trust on your computer and on the internet. Do you really want your sex toy manufacturer making that for you? No, you don't. So yeah, but anyways, that's where that AI question comes in though. Is it's like that thing is just kind of reaping video, and yeah, it's gonna pull whatever motion out of it at once, and that could get weird. That could get real weird. But there will be some sort of media uproar about it, I'm sure.
Oh, for sure. Especially as these toys get more and more complex, right? Like if we're dealing with just, if you just have like a wand, right? You're entirely in control of what that's used for. But then when you have that piece where the company making the product is partially involved in it, and then, you know, media outlets find that it can be used with whatever illegal material. You know, yeah.
Well, and we're also, I would expect this year we're going to see the first major integrations of sex toys with LLMs. It's already happening in the hobbyist scene, but some sex toy company is finally just going to do the dumb thing and make AI companions that can actually also control your toy. And shit's gonna get weird. Like, shit's gonna get Charlie Strauss level weird. Like, it's not, I'm not looking forward to it, honestly. But it is inevitable.
Right.
I mean, and the thing is, and there's also just a bunch of predictions that are just going to end up wrong. Like, we spent that time in like 2016, 2017, where by 2025, we're all supposed to be having sex with sex robots now. And I don't see no sex robots. I was very, very pessimistic about that then, and I was right.
Well, you know, it depends on how you define robot, right? Like, you know,
Actually, yeah. I mean, because technically, I mean, a lot of the toys that we have that we support are kind of sex robots, but
especially once you get some like the really complex ones, right? Like, you know, if it has 6 degrees of movement, you know, you're getting pretty close.
Like the SR6 and stuff. Yeah, no, it's a type of robot. I mean, as much as like a KUKA arm or anything else. It just, but I mean, when people think sex robots, they're going for the AI as in the Kubrick Spielberg type, like Jude Law, humanoid, like the stuff that real
Realbotix. I was literally about to
yeah.
bring it up. I've got an article open right now about Realbotix. And they're like, it's not a sex robot. It's for companionship. However, we can't, you know.
Yeah. Realbotix is very good at getting PR. Yeah.
This, like, you know, it's kind of crude today, right? But I don't see any technical limitation they're going to run into anytime soon. Like, where are we going to be in, you know, 10, 15, 20 years? Like, especially with
the limit. Yeah, it's more, the limitation is less technical and more people.
Right.
Like the major thing that I run into is not so much, well, I mean, the tech sucks. Don't get me wrong. Like every piece of software we have is really shouldn't call them ass. That's where they go, not what they are. They're bad. They're just bad. There is no engineering thought put into this. Most of the companies that produce these things don't have engineering teams. They're just outsourcing to a factory or a contract manufacturer and saying, make this thing, and then they just put their brand on it and sell it. But on top of that, though, people don't really have good sex education in the first place, like with each other, much less with the complexities of online relationships and the differences that are needed in communication and security and everything else around that. And that's going to get way worse before it gets better, because the technology keeps moving on, but the education's not catching up. I mean, a lot of people are still just finding out that teledildonics exists. Like, the term's been around for 35 years now.
Okay.
And so teledildonics is the term that
I thought it was just a funny word that you used. I didn't know it was an actual
term. No, that is actually, it was coined by Reingold in a Mondo 2000 article in 1990. It's an outgrowth of the term dildonics that Ted Nelson coined in 1976 as part of Computer Lib Dream Machines.
Close, 95.
So there's your...
You almost got it.
Yeah.
So yeah.
I mean, people are still finding out that there are computer-controlled sex toys, because a lot of people just don't even really know what sex toys are out there. So it's a huge problem of knowing what's out there and then catching up with what the current state of it is, what you can and can't trust, so on and so forth, which is the same with every other. I mean, this is the same issue that people have with social media and misinformation and all that stuff. It's just
Well, even just
the
using
tech
a
keeps
computer,
moving,
right?
and-
Like, there's a lot of people
Yeah.
who, like, I remember when I had to teach my mum how to send an email.
Yep. Yeah, and things just keep getting more complicated, but we don't move everyone along with it.
Yeah.
So it's just gonna continue to be interesting's the best and most neutral term I can put to it, I think.
Well, let's talk a bit about the process of adding device support. The very first thing I want to get into is device connectivity. How what methods are used to connect to a device?
Okay. 98% of the time right now. Oh, there went my foot. Oh, the fun of VR. Okay, so 98% of the time, the connectivity is Bluetooth LE. And that is because 98% of the time, it is assumed these devices will be connected to a smartphone. And that is the only way you can easily connect to a smartphone. And a lot of people are going to be like, but what about Wi-Fi? Networks are complicated. Networks are extremely complicated, especially when you add a device to a network you don't own. So trying to make sure that your device and your phone are on the same subnet, are going to be able to see each other, and don't even bring MDNS into this conversation. So Bluetooth is just the easiest for like sort of peer to peer, like just a one to one, like phone talks to hardware.
Right.
And device manufacturers consider that that's mostly what it's going to be. Now there are devices that talk HID or wired USB or wired serial. Serial's mostly either older devices or DIY stuff. And that's mostly and that is flung over USB. Like I have some devices that have DB9 connectors on them. They are no longer produced. But yeah, and so there's that kind of interconnect. And that's but mostly it's just Bluetooth these days. It's rare, like for every 500 Bluetooth device users, we'll get someone in that's doing serial for the OSR2 or SR6 or something like that.
I'm looking at the list right now, and some of them are saying audio.
Yeah.
What is that supposed to mean?
Okay, so that means that they have little microphones on them. That might just pick up audio or something.
Okay.
Reverse engineering devices. So most devices are Bluetooth. How do we actually talk to them? How do we reverse engineer them? Most of the time, we just crack open their Android app and look. It's fair use decompilation for interconnectivity, so and interoperability. We're not interested in cracking anyone's encryption or taking anyone's services down. We just want the protocol, and then we're done. Otherwise, though, there have been times.
Oh, sorry. I was gonna say, regarding the protocols, are the ones doing anything kind of weird with it? Where it's like, what engineer, what psychopath decided to write the protocol like this?
Oh, that's the norm.
Okay,
it is very, very rare that we will find someone that's like, oh, that makes sense. Levin's toys are kind of okay. They just talk in strings. Like you want a Levin's toy to vibrate? You say vibrate, and a number between 0 and 20, semicolon, and you send it over and you're vibrating. That's it.
Fair.
That's fine. It's just good enough. But no, there's been some ones where it's just like, here's a random string of bytes. It's not actually encrypted in any way, though we have actually found like AES encryption and stuff on some devices. And we're not sure why. It's like, what did you think you were gonna do?
Are they like I would understand that for like if it's like web connected and you're like, you know, connecting with a partner, I guess that would make sense. But like other than that.
Yeah, it doesn't really make sense. I don't know. Oh, I mean, people are worried about, like, some manufacturers worry about other manufacturers, like, taking over like how there's recurring revenue streams that they're trying to protect.
Sure. Okay, that's
yeah, so mostly we just crack it. I mean, but there's other times where it's like the manufacturer will just go, here's the spec, have fun. We love those manufacturers. Like, yeah, no, there are people that are cool with like what we do, and like because that's the thing is we present manufacturers with a free ecosystem. If they just want to make a toy and it's supported by us, suddenly they have all of these video players, all of these games, they just work with. And that's great for them. It's just not everyone really understands that. We haven't really had any legal trouble or anything with anyone. Like, we try to stay out of that, try not to, like, I don't want to get too deep into like the patent law fun that is the sex toy and computer controlled sex toy industry. It's kind of a nightmare. I mean, for one of the reasons that innovation was so stifled was that there was a teledildontics patent in 1997 that we literally had to wait for it to go up in 2018 for people to not have to license. And they were very nasty about the licensing. There was a huge lawsuit in 2015 that took multiple companies with it because Patent Troll got a hold of the patent right before it went up and started just suing the shit out of everyone. It sucked.
What did that patent cover? Like, what was it?
Literally vibrators that could be controlled by a computer and controlled through the internet.
I guess that makes sense why there's been such an influx of them the past couple of years then.
Wildly, yeah. And now there's a patent on cam tipping. So if you are watching a cam model through a site like Fansly or Chatterbait or something like that, and there's an option to run their toy based on giving them money, that is a patented procedure. So there is only one company that is now licensing it out, but that is patented. Yes. So yeah, that's why we avoid cam tipping. It's like the adult industry has always been wildly litigious. It's something we try to stay out of because it's also very expensive. But we still kind of do what we can, though. Yeah.
Okay, so when we're looking at supporting a device, let's say we'll start with something that doesn't have their own ecosystem. Let's say it's just some like random, I don't know, $20 device, $50 device off of Amazon. No, some random Chinese manufacturer, no idea what it is. What would you even begin with doing to deal with that?
So we Actually have this happen about once a week on our Discord now. There's a new-ish Chinese manufacturer called Joy Hub that is putting out tens of devices like a month. Our poor device dev can barely keep up with them. And so we'll just get some person come in and it's like, yeah, I bought this Joy Hub random name string of numbers. And we're like, what the is that? And so we talk to them about like, okay, like we'll ask them to go get a smartphone application, something like there's smartphone Bluetooth analyzers like NRF Connect, where it just allows you to see like what Bluetooth devices are advertising and you can send them packets and stuff. It's kind of nice. So we'll have them use that to pull some data from the device and then we'll try to source it ourselves. We'll try to actually get the device ourselves, figure out what app it uses and go from there. So this is why we do crowdfunding and like have Patreons and affiliate sales and stuff, because it's like just trying to like keep up with that is quite the expense. But yeah, like usually most times we can actually work with most devices that we get. There's only been a few where it's been like, okay, that's encrypted in a weird way, and the manufacturer's been like, there's been a couple of times where it's like the manufacturer's been weird toward us, and it's just like, I just don't. It's just you stay over there.
Yeah.
But yeah, most times it comes together and either the manufacturer is happy or they just don't even contact us. They don't even know we exist. And, oh, whatever. Because our major problem is a lot of our users want the cheapest thing possible.
Sure.
So like I would say the category king here, like the Google of sex toys is Lovense at this point. A lot of people don't really say like, I have a computer controlled sex toy. I have a teledildontics device. They say, I have a Lovense.
Yeah. It's sort of like, it's that generic term now. It's so big
it is.
where, there's places in the US where they call like cola Coke, right? Because it's
Coke, so that's, but Lovense devices like start at $80 on the cheap side, and a lot of people can't afford that, so they're like, what can I get for $15? And that's kind of where a lot of our new stuff comes in now. Is it's just like, okay, well, someone found this thing for $10 and apparently it's going to work. Once to rabbit hole for like the 97th time on this conversation, one thing that we don't support that's actually pretty interesting, there's this set of devices that are under the brand Lovense, or sorry, not Lovense. We definitely support Lovense. Edit that out. Okay. There is a set of devices known as Love Spouse. Love Spouse or Muse. These are Bluetooth devices, but they are very weird in that they, instead of acting as what we call a Bluetooth peripheral, they act as a central. So usually your computer is the central. And when you want to like find a Bluetooth device, you turn your device on and it starts screaming, "Hey, I'm a Bluetooth device." And your computer finds it and you connect to it. This swaps that around where it acts as a thing that listens for advertisements, and it expects your phone or computer to spew advertisements at it that set the vibration speed. So a few months ago, there was a Flipper Zero release that would allow you to control as many of these toys as you want because there's no connection mechanism. As long as you're throwing advertisements, the toy will react. And the problem is these toys are hyper cheap. You can get them for $10 to $20 on AliExpress. Right. So we've just seen this huge flood of them, and we refuse to support them because, well, first off, advertisements that'd require us to implement a whole new Bluetooth peripheral side library with all of the cross-platform and stuff. And I don't want to. But also, it's just wildly insecure. It's just like, I mean, anyone can walk by you.
You have AES on one side, and then literally just responds to anything that sends a packet to it.
Yep.
Okay.
It's not good. Yeah.
It could be easy to support if you wanted to, but like...
we keep having people go like, here's the sample code. Here's exactly how you do it. And I'm just like, I don't want to. Like, our library and our protocol expect a connection mechanism because when a client disconnects, we want to know that we can send a stop to the device and everything else. This kind of works outside of that mechanism in ways that these are not particularly, once again, like aggressive toys. These aren't machines or anything else. They're just little vibrators. But even so, that loss of connection context is just, it's freaky.
Right.
So, yeah.
Right, because if it like lost access to the device and it was stuck at whatever,
and we don't know
whatever.
Yeah, it'll just be it'll just keep going. Yeah.
Yeah, I can understand the concern there. That makes a lot of sense. Okay, so when we're talking about our premier toys, when we're talking about like Lovense, when we're talking about when we have devices that are of similar capabilities, so we're talking about something that vibrates. Do the different devices in their like device range behave in a similar way with how you would control them, or is there just like some wild difference between them for seemingly no reason for the same function?
Is this within brand or
Yeah,
between
within
different
brand.
bands? Okay, within brand, it's usually the same.
Mm-hmm.
So Lovense has been pretty good about that. I mean, Lovense has actually been kind of wild about that. They actually put out a full-on machine, and it reacted to vibrate commands. It's like that's not I guess that's incredibly low frequency, like long, like push vibration or something. I don't know, but most of their commands look the same. There are other brands. Once again, Joy Hub, Magic Motion. I think we have like 7 different implementations of their different protocols. Kiru's had like 5 different protocols. Like, so some of them are fine, some of them are easy, some of them are okay. Well, same brand, but we're gonna have to redo it all over again. So Lovense hasn't been too bad though. Kiru is kind of settled. Yeah.
So it's sort of a matter of, well, very much depends on the company, and I guess it makes sense for Lovense, right? Because they are such a big company, they can, they can afford to actually engineer stuff properly.
Well, and Lovense is one of the few companies that also actually puts out their own SDKs. So they have multiple ways to program for their toys. If you don't want to use butt plugin, you just want to like access Lovense toys, they have libraries for it. And not only that, that actually happens quite often because they will all, like, if you are a software developer and you use their libraries, they will advertise for you on their various forums and whatnot. So there is a bit of symbiosis there. That, I mean, with Buttplug, you get our community and whatnot too. So
Well, I guess
there's
even if they did things weirdly, because they have the SDK, like it would still be pretty easy to write connectivity for it, assuming they're not doing anything weird encryption stuff.
No, they it's all strings. It's all strings flying over what basically looks like a UART. It's they're super simple. And most other companies just don't put out SDKs. Like just straight, like Lalo tried for one of their toys. It was actually a very nicely structured and documented SDK, but the toy was crap. So no one ever used it. So this is, I mean, this is kind of why Lovense has the brand recognition that they do, because they know that they need to talk to developers. They know that they need to integrate with games and applications and whatnot, while everyone else is just like, okay, we're just going to support video sync on these porn sites, and that's it. That's our recurring revenue. The end.
Right.
And we feel like there's a middle ground there between like the companies that won't like talk to anyone, Lovense, and because people want different toys than Lovense puts out, but those companies aren't willing to do anything. So we are the middle ground. Yeah.
Well, I guess with them having an SDK, it makes perfect sense why why their protocol makes sense, right? Because developers want to deal with it, so you're gonna want to have sensible things the developers interact with. You don't want them to write some like weird arcane string to make things happen. You want it to be basically JSON, like that.
I would say that some of our developers, especially the developers of the client libraries for other program languages, would definitely call some of Buttplug stuff arcane. We have some very weird ways of putting things together at times, but yes, Lovense, like, and they're very good about like they present the ability to control stuff both through WebSockets and pure like HTTP REST calls. Like that's something that we don't actually like. I'm working on that right now. We've had a few people implement REST servers on top of Buttplug, but I've always kept it where it's like, no, I want to make sure we have connections and whatnot. I don't want to deal with tokens, but I'm actually implementing a REST system that will be integrating into interface engine and central, so that people don't have to worry about WebSockets if they don't want to, because that's a like we have a set of developers we can work with who are okay working with libraries and whatnot, but there is sort of a set of developers that's not as experienced, or they just want to do something really fast, where if we just hand them, here's an HTTP API, just like send this value to this URL and you'll vibrate something, that's going to be better for them.
Yep.
And that's something I certainly like kind of learned from like watching how Levins has developed things and whatnot. Yeah.
So do you recall the very first device that was added to butt plug?
That would be some of the original Levins toys, like the Nora and Max, and the Fleshlight launch. So there is on my YouTube channel, I did like a full 50-minute, like, yeah, you can go youtube.buttplug.io. So that was one of the very first videos I did on that channel too, was like a 45-minute like breakdown of the Fleshlight launch. That's a toy that's no longer available. That was made by a combination of Fleshlight and Kiryu. They broke up basically. Kiryu now makes a toy called the Keon. Yeah, so that's they make a Keon, and they now make their own Onahole. And Fleshlight went back to making non-computerized stuff because they know they can just make latex tubes or silicone tubes forever and make bank off of it. And you know what? More power to them. That's super smart.
Yeah.
If you can avoid technology, then by all means, make money some other way.
Well, there's always going to be a market for that, right? Like, yeah, obviously there are people that want these application controlled devices, or they want to be able to sync across the internet with another toy, but like, you know, there's always going to be that market for just the simple toy.
So this is actually a really interesting point, since I'm here in VR chat right now. One of the things that I tell people in here is, if you can do intimate things in VR chat, but make sure you really need to use something computer controlled while you're in here, because you're in like VR gear and stuff. Like this stuff's not easy to wash. And also you have TVs strapped to your head too. So it's kind of hard to maneuver and stuff. And then if you add Bluetooth controlled toys to all this, that's fine. Where it's like, if you just clamp a Fleshlight to a desk, and especially if you have like full body tracking like I do, where it's like I can okay, well, I had a cursor here. So yeah, like I can actually like pick up my legs and all. Then there is something to be said for just clamping a Fleshlight to a desk and calling it a day. Like, you don't need the technology. You just need something that feels good. It doesn't really need to react. And honestly, like, if you have a hip tracker, which, granted, if you have a hip tracker, you've already spent like $1,500 on hardware. So you may actually be poor from that and not be able to afford a computer controlled toy. But just a regular old Fleshlight will do fine. You may not need all of the crazy fancy stuff. Yeah.
So one thing I did want to ask, and I maybe should have asked this earlier. If you meet someone who's not aware of what you do, do you even try to explain what you do?
It depends on the context. It's because if I'm standing right next to many of my friends who will be like, "Oh yeah, so this is the butt plug guy." Like that's, I should say first off, it's like, I may not have to explain it. If I am with someone that knows what I do, it is going to be one of the biggest joys in their life to explain it for me while I say nothing, while I just stand there and it's like, yeah, that's me. That is what I do. So I kind of let that happen. And then it really depends on the context. Like, I kind of have to be like, if it's an academic context or something, well, it's like, well, I work in effective haptics, because that's the same realm of things as like hug jackets and like the little friendship bracelets where you can press a button on one. Oh man. Yeah. Hug jackets have been a thing for decades. So there's quite a few different kinds, but the idea is it's like you should be able to give someone a hug remotely.
I
Um,
see.
yeah. It's a very when we're talking more about like academic affective haptics and whatnot, which is basically like the ability to engage with and cause emotion through a simulated version of touch, of which intimate haptics is a subset.
Right.
So like you can come up with things like that. And kind of explain your way down into the gutter. uh, but yeah, so it's all about the context. But I can leave it up there and just say yes, I work with like effective haptics and hug jackets and like elicitation of emotion through simulated touch and all that stuff. Or I could be like, yeah, it's butt plugs. It's butt plugs.
Yeah, if you're at CES standing next to a sex toy demo, you're like, yeah, I programmed.
Oh yeah, I
stuff
mean,
for
I go to
this.
GDC every
Yeah,
year, and people kind of know what I do there. That one's always really funny because I'll like go up to like some haptic actuator booth, and they're like, "Who are you?" And of course, the like person next to me from like some big name haptic, and they're like, "Oh, this is a butt plug guy," and they're like, "Oh." Like yeah, so yeah, it's fun. It really is fun. Like I'm kind of glad it hasn't gotten old because I think I'm stuck with the title for the rest of my life.
I can think of worse titles. It's a fun one.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
certainly a conversation starter.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely.
Oh god. We've covered a lot of things in this episode. This has been a lot of fun. I've really enjoyed this.
Yeah, it's been great. I'm glad we finally got together to talk. Yeah, the timing could have been better between like the 3DS stuff and now Balatro, and yeah, it's starting off to be a good year for Butt Plug. We got a lot of stuff coming down the pipeline with our new protocol and like trying to make life easier with people for like this REST interface and all. So, really looking forward to a year full of more shit posts and maybe a couple of actually useful things.
So if people want to find out about the project, get involved in any way, talk about it, where can they go? Where can people find your stuff?
Yeah, so you can find us at buttplug.io. First off, that's where our library or the library website is. We are on GitHub at github.com/buttplugio. You can find our Discord at discord.buttplug.io. I've got a YouTube channel at youtube.buttplug.io, and I'm now streaming on Twitch at
Nice.
twitch.buttplug.io. So there's multiple outlets to find out about the project, talk to us more, see what's going on.
Oh, actually, on that note, have you ever had any issues with like YouTube or Twitch with like streaming what you're doing?
Weirdly enough, not yet. For YouTube, I have definitely had videos go require age verification.
Sure.
It's random though. Twitch, so I really just started doing Twitch last September, and I started out with the name buttplug.io, which was amazing. I got so many gift subs because I would go watch someone stream, and then someone would see I was on there, and they just wanted to force whoever was streaming to say buttplug.io, so I would get a gift sub. Unfortunately, that got shut down in like a month. So now I'm qdot.fm on there because we're still doing that like that thing of Fox movers. There's a lot of weird rules on Twitch about what you can and can't show. Technically, you can show sexual devices, but only in an educational format, which is what I do. I'm usually on there talking about how pieces of our code work, or showing how to make a mod, or showing how other mods work. But the second you start making jokes about it, then it actually becomes apparently against TOS. So it's a fine line to skirt, but that's why we don't really work with sex toys. We work with fox movers, and I've just got my little stuffed fox that sits on things and moves around my desk.
That is a great way to get around it.
Yeah.
Oh, is there anything else you want to mention, or can we start to wrap this up?
I think that pretty much covers it. It's been a good couple hours. So yeah.
Awesome. I'll do my outro and then we can sign it off.
Okay,
So
great.
my main channel is Brody Robertson. I do Linux videos there 6-ish days a week. Check that out. I don't know what's going to be there by the time this comes out. I've got my gaming channel, Brody on Games. Right now, I'll be playing through Nine Souls. Very fun game. And I don't know what'll be in the other slot. Maybe my side? I don't know. We'll see. I've not started it yet, but I will be playing it very soon. And I've got the React channel as well, so clips from the stream will go there. That is Brody Robertson Reacts. I've also the podcast. If you're listening to the audio version of this, you can find the video version on YouTube at Tech Over Tea. If you'd like to find the audio version, it's on pretty much every podcast platform. Spotify has video as well, which is cool. There is an RSS feed as well if you prefer that instead. So I will give you the final word. What do you want to say? I never tell people they're doing this. It's so fun.
God.
I love watching them squat.
Okay. Well, yeah, go visit betplug.io. I hope everyone finds something useful or stupid to do with the project. And until next time, keep butt plugging.